Hello and welcome to EPR with your favorite environmental enthusiasts, Nick and Laura. On today's episode, Laura and I talk about animals that aren't as scary as they seem. We talk to Laurie LaPat-Polasko about microbial bioremediation, working with your hero, and Humpback Whale Encounters. And finally, speaking of humpback whales, during the height of commercial whaling from the 1940s to 1960s, the humpback whale was hunted nearly to extinction. Global populations dropped by more than 90% before regulators enacted a worldwide moratorium on hunting in 1966. Fortunately, the humpback whale is one of the greatest success stories in whale recovery. Now whales have come all the way back from the brink of extinction and are now considered a species of least concern. How about that? Hit that music. NAEP will be hosting the Advanced NEPA training in person at the Santa Clara Valley Water District on Friday, November 17th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. The workshop will benefit those professionals who work in related natural resources disciplines, who work with federal land management or real estate transactions, federal agency projects or permitting, transportation or other infrastructure projects with a NEPA review component. Check it out at www.naep.org. Let's get to our segment. It always makes me a little sad when people, I get it. Like people are scared of like copperheads or, rattlesnakes and everything. It's like, well, we got to kill it. You don't have to kill it.
That's me with spiders.
Yeah. And there's things that people have irrational fears of too. And there's spiders and snakes are right up there. Sharks are pretty high on the list as well, unfortunately.
I just saw a video today of some guys on a beach rescuing a beached shark.
Oh, yeah.
This thing was huge.
Yeah, I saw that. It was like a mako or something. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Like,
no thanks.
That's brave.
No thanks. That is
I was
very
trying
brave.
to think, would I do that? Because, that's kind of what I would want to do.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, nerd facts. The thing I love about sharks is that there's with their scales, their skin has scutes on it. It's got teeth, basically.
Mm.
So you can go one way and it's smooth. The other way, it's basically sandpaper and it'll cut you. And that's kind of cool. So there you go. I don't know why.
From Nick.
But yeah, that's in my brain. That is probably replaced a core memory of me as a child. So there we go. Yeah.
So cool. I think that could be a segment if we finished it.
And I don't even remember what we were talking about.
Just not every, the scary animals aren't all.
Oh, the scary animals aren't all scary. Even the scary ones aren't, even when they do scary things, they're not even trying to. We all know that. But it's funny. It's I don't know. There's so many stories of almost every time, with snakes in particular, it's because someone tried to pick it up and they got bit. That's why. People think they're faster than snakes. I don't know why. I don't understand. So I can grab it before it bites me. No, you can't. You cannot do that. That is not possible. Yeah.
So I was at a friend's horse barn and there was a probably 3.5 foot yellow rat snake. Mm-hmm. And she was going to kill it. What? And I was like, you're not.
No, come on.
So I picked it up.
Yeah.
And I got him. I walked him to the far end of the property and set him free. Hopefully he didn't come right back.
I hate to break it to your friend, but he probably came right back. That's
I know. But at least I was hoping that I at least showed her that, hey, you don't have to kill it, Yeah.
And there's some snakes you can pick up, black rat snakes in East Coast. Those are pretty mild mannered. Even if you do pick them up, they're not necessarily going to bite you. But the ones that have venom, let's just not. Okay. Let's not pick it up.
Yeah. First and foremost, you have to be able to identify what you're
yes,
trying
that's
to
step one.
pick up.
Step one, right?
I did know if it bit me, it would be okay.
Right. And if you're not sure, assume it's not. It could hurt you. And cottonmouths and water snakes are a great example, right? They look really similar.
Yeah.
If you see a cottonmouth, it looks angrier than the water snake. It just looks like it's mad. And but if you just see the water snake, you don't have any context for it. It also looks exactly like a cottonmouth. Just assume it is.
Yeah.
Because the water snakes that look like them also will musk you, and that will smell forever. So don't pick them up. Yeah. I think honestly, we're on real snake topic here. Hognose snakes. Have you ever heard of those?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Actually, I found one, like, it was like trying to cross the road, and I'm trying to scoot it across the road because I'm a crazy person. And it did its little death rattle in the middle of the street. And I'm like, that is adorable. I love that you musked yourself just for me, and you smell terrible now, but if you could just keep going.
Those little guys are crazy.
Yeah, they're really cool looking, and they're really, really bizarre.
But they're feisty.
Yes, they're extremely feisty. They really are feisty, but they're, non-venomous, but like, yeah, don't pick it up.
Yeah, they act tough. That's for sure.
Yes, exactly. And I'm just like, I'm trying to stomp it, just not. Oh wow, that came out wrong. Trying to stomp near it to push it along. Like I don't want to touch you. I don't want to be near you. But hey, let's move along. And he was fine. He did. He got through. But yeah.
Yeah, I try not to be in the habit of just killing things. There was a scorpion when I was in the Mole National Park. And we were in our hotel. 3 a.m. I got up and there was a scorpion on the floor. I just shoot him out the door.
Yeah.
Like, I could squish you, but
did you scream while you were doing it? Ooh, that's what.
No, because my roommate, I needed her to not know it was there,
at all. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
She would have been packing her bags and going home.
So if she's listening, so sorry about...
I didn't tell her till after we left.
There we go. That's smart. Okay, she knows. All right. That's good. Yeah. And
so funny bug stories, like changing topics now. We'll end after this. But this woman is completely terrified of bugs. And we're in this national park and, all bugs.
That's literally surrounded by bugs.
She's an environmental engineer. She has to go in the field sometimes, but she's very uncomfortable.
That's very funny.
So it was cool getting her outside of her comfort zone. But the day we're leaving, we're standing out in like the area by the pool and where we eat food. A praying mantis literally jumps up and kisses her on the face.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I thought it was the coolest thing. And then he just hung out like on the fence next to us. Mm-hmm. But it was like, of all people.
Right. Of course. It's like they know. It's like they know. Yeah.
I don't think she'd ever seen one before. So that was cool.
Yeah, they're really awesome. They're intense bugs. And they can get pretty big.
Yeah, this was probably 4 inches and it smacked her right in the face.
Right in the face. Golly. That's funny. I remember like doing like the physical fitness test when as a kid, you had to do the mile. And I'm running the mile, and like hornet flies and hits me right in the teeth, and it dies. It flew so hard that my teeth killed it, and like so. Oh, it was so gross. And then I looked at what it was.
Sting your teeth because like they die after they sting, right?
But it wasn't even stinging me. It just flew. It flew head first into my teeth, and then thankfully not into my mouth, which was wide open. And if it was like literally a millisecond down, I would have swallowed it and it would have stung me in my throat and I would not be here. Right. Like, but like, yeah, I look at it and I've never been able to run again. That's like,
that was the end of my running career.
It was, it's like, and then like you think about like riding a motorcycle and not having like a shield guard for that. No, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm not swallowing a bee. Not happening.
But bees are another one. Lots of people think all bees are stingers and bad, and they're not either.
Right. Wasps are kind of punks, but yeah, even then, just don't party. Don't party with it. All right.
Yeah, they can sneak attack you though sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
I was painting my house one time and it felt like someone came up and poked me in the ribs really, really hard with something sharp. And I was like, I turned around and thought someone was going to be there. Yeah. It was just a wasp and stung me.
Oh, that's funny. Gosh, my worst sting. The worst sting was definitely a hornet, but that's not fun. But like, like there's a moment in your life you're like, oh no, this isn't great. And I was a kid. I was like doing the monkey bars, and I was swinging from one to the next, and I was about to close my hand down when a wasp landed, and then I was boom, closed right over it, and of course it stung me straight in the hand. I killed it, but it was like, the stinger, they had to pull it out of me, and I was like, awful. Oh, right in the middle of my right hand. So I'm like, I can't write in school, so I guess I'll not do my homework. And they're like, no.
The other two, real quickly, but Sam was like, you guys are rambling. I was kayaking in mangroves, and a yellow jacket stung me in my armpit. That freaking hurt. Yeah. Armpits are sensitive.
Yeah.
And then the worst was, though, I had an orange cat one time, and I was just I carried him, I don't know why, carried him to the mailbox with me to get the mail.
Yes.
And this happened in slow motion. I carry him out there. Out from a bush comes some sort of stinging, I can't remember what it was at this point, wasp or something. He literally reaches up and grabs it like it's a football, both paws, pulls it into his face. And I'm going, no. Pulls it into his face and it stings him. And then I have to get him in the house before he starts flipping out. And then he was like trying to rip his own face off. It was terrifying. I was like, oh my God, what did I do? I'm never bringing you outside again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's that's a life lesson.
It was crazy. It all happened like totally slow motion.
No. Yeah, exactly. That was me in the monkey bars. The exact same thing. I was I knew it was going to happen the second I looked at the bar. I'm like, oh gosh, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing.
Right.
Yeah. But no.
You're just going, oh, I've made a terrible mistake.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Why? But no. Okay. All right. Last one, Sam. I swear to God. So the Hornet was the worst, right? The Hornet. And it's like we hiked up Pikes Peak, Peaks of Otter, for those who are familiar, and at Blue Ridge Parkway. Very beautiful, very fun. Coming back down, I'm like 10 years old, and we're almost to the bus to go back to school. And I feel something really big on my leg. And I mean, it is like 2 inches. And I look down and it's white and black. And I'd never seen it before, like white and black. I'm like, what the heck is this? And it looks like a wasp, but it looks like a monster wasp. Find out later, yeah, it's a hornet, bell hornet or something like that.
Ooh.
And I'm like, please don't sting me. And the second I thought that, it went boom right in the back of my knee. It felt like someone.
That's an armpit. That's horrible.
It was the worst pain I think I've ever felt from any kind of animal. Not even close. There's not even a close second.
Well, I don't think we did a good job of saying live and let live.
I didn't kill it. It flew away. It flew away.
They're not all bad. Swear they're not all bad. All right, let's get to our interview.
Right.
Welcome back to EPR. Today we have Dr. Laurie LaPat-Polasko, Vice President at Matrix New World Engineering, on the show. Welcome, Laurie.
Thank you very much.
I am super excited. We've already been chatting behind the scenes, and I'm like, no, stop. We have to save this for the show. So first and foremost, and I have to bring this up first because Nic isn't here today, and he will be just so envious. But by the time this airs, so like today, you are in Antarctica. So what are you there for? And you're going to be there for a whole month.
I'm heading off to Antarctica this week, but by the time this shows, I will be in Antarctica. I'm joining 79 other women who have backgrounds in STEM, who have been selected to help provide leadership for the planet Earth in challenging environmental projects across the world. So we're coming together to kind of understand what are the biggest environmental challenges that we can have an impact on. So we'll be developing these projects while we're on the ship, visiting various Antarctica stations down in the South Pole. So
very cool.
It's a big challenge, but I think all the women are really motivated. They come from diverse backgrounds, a lot of engineering people, but we also have medical scientists, we have physicists, but a diverse group of women who are really focused on we as a group can make a change on our planet.
That's so cool. Have you been to Antarctica before?
Now, I have. Now, the crazy thing, I was actually in Antarctica this past March.
Oh, wow.
I know I'm going to be spending a significant time in Antarctica this year. And I was down there studying the humpback whales. That's one of my passions. Studying marine mammals, including whales and dolphins. And one of the reasons I became an environmental engineer was because I realized how the marine life was getting negatively impacted by a lot of pollution on our planet. So my goal was, okay, what can I do to start cleaning up the oceans and the lakes and the seas and et cetera, and so that these marine life can survive and grow.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I see your little whale earrings. So I know you're all about it. But you have so much going on, and it's hard to like pinpoint a starting point for us. But let's start off with how you got where you are today, because now you're like the National Director of Remediation with Matrix New World. How did you get there? And I know it's kind of a long, windy road. So give us the high level. How'd you get there?
To make a long story short, I was interested in marine life as a kid. I used to go to the Shedd Aquarium in Chicago, which is a beautiful aquarium. As a kid, we'd visit it, and I'm like, oh, nuts. And they would have a diver in the coral reef tank. And a lot of aquariums all over the world, they'll have a diver get in there, and they'll have a microphone in their scuba gear, and they will talk to you while you're watching the marine life. And I was like, wow, that is the absolute coolest job in the world. I want to do that job one day. So when I went off to college, I majored in marine biology. And of course, I took scuba diving. So then at our college, we had these internships. So I wrote a letter to the director of the Shedd Aquarium saying, hey, I want to do an internship at the Shedd Aquarium. Is there an opportunity for me to do it? And he wrote me back and said, he'd like to interview me. So I interviewed. Next thing you know, a couple months later, I'm diving in the coral reef tank at the Shedd Aquarium, feeding all the marine life and giving my lecture. And super fun job, great experience. What was even more fun was I came to work the day after Christmas, and the aquarium's only closed 2 days of the year. Christmas is one of them. Yeah. And now all my college buddies are coming to watch me, and my friends are coming to watch me. And I'm very excited to be giving my lecture, but I'm not super paying attention. And I went to feed one of the sharks some shrimp, and the shark wasn't paying attention either. And he bit down on my hand, and blood started shooting out. And people are yelling jaws in the eye. It was my best show ever, Laura. No. The good news is a couple of weeks later, I was back in the tank and swimming with all my buddies. But that working at the Shedd Aquarium with the marine life was like, this is so much fun. And so then from that experience, I went on and did a couple of other internships that we can talk about or not. And I finally ended up writing my junior year a letter to Jacques Cousteau and telling him about my experiences at the Shedd Aquarium and about my research at the University of Florida in Gainesville and, some other research projects I was doing. And I said, if possible, I'd like to do an independent study or join one of your research teams there. And it took about 6 months for Cousteau to write me back. I mean, this is back in the days when people actually wrote letters. It seems like so archaic now. I mean, I talk to out the universities, and I'm a professor, adjunct professor at ASU, and they look at me like, oh my gosh, you actually wrote a letter? It is shocking. But I did, and he wrote me back, and he said he'd be happy to have me join one of his teams. So the next thing I knew, I was hopping on a plane to Monaco and working with Jacques Cousteau. And when I joined his team, one of our major studies was studying water pollution in the Mediterranean Sea and understanding where the pollution was coming from, what impact we could have. And so after that experience, when I came back to go to graduate school at Stanford, I was like, wow, this environmental stuff is really important. We really need to do something about it. Stanford had just been developing an environmental engineering program. So make a long story short, I applied to it, got in, and then the rest of it was kind of history. And so that's kind of the abbreviated story.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I mean, I think a lot of people now probably listening to that are probably like just envious of, oh, you wrote a letter and then you were just in like that.
Well,
it doesn't seem to be how it works today, but it does.
And it does. I think when I talk to young people and young engineers and scientists, the one thing I want them to really understand is that they should just go for it. Yeah. Be fearless. Do not be afraid. I mean, what's the worst thing Cousteau could have said? No, I don't have any openings, or no, you're not welcome, or whatever. And then I wasted the money on well, I didn't waste the money, but I, spent the money on the stamp. But I think that most people really want to help young people grow and expand their careers and learn. And over the years now, I've had many students and interns who've worked with me, and I think I get a lot of joy from watching them grow and expand and really grab hold of the environmental engineering field and say, this is really the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I mean, a perfect lead to my next question. So you've won several awards for leadership and engineering along your way also. I didn't want to list them all here, but is there one you're most proud of?
Yeah, I think the Society of Women Engineer Prism Award is one that I really feel good about it, because this was an award that was given to somebody who had significant mentorship, grasped hold of really trying to educate the public and the students in the field. And it's kind of a broad type of perspective. And I am really happy to be able to help the students discover what their passion is. I think a lot of students are not sure. You go off to college and you think you know what you want to major in, but I think many students really are not sure of what they want to do with their lives, and they think they want to do things, and then they start doing that field or whatever, and then they like, oh my gosh, I hate this or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm a big proponent of encouraging students in high school and college and graduate school of trying new things, of getting out there and getting involved in a field that they're interested in. So I try to encourage it. If you want to become a scientist or engineer, I give lots of students laboratory experience, because you're either going to love it or hate it, but by doing it, you will find out where you are in your passion for that field.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think when I'm career coaching, people come to me and they want me to tell them what should I apply for? And I'm like, you have to make that decision, and then I'll give it. I did that in the beginning. I'll be like, oh, I think you should do this. And every time, nah, I don't think so. You just have to go try. And I think that a lot of people are afraid, like if they try it and they don't like it, then that's a failure, but it's not, right?
No, absolutely not. I think it's so much better for you to try lots. It's funny because my daughter, when she was young and, middle school and, high school, she's like, oh yeah, I want to become a senator or a U.S. president. I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds rough. But then she went off and studied up in the North Pole, global warming on a Russian icebreaker ship for a month. And after that, she came back to, Arizona, the desert. She says, that's it. I'm going to become an environmental engineer. And I'm thinking, well, I only had to send you 5,000 miles away and you get back.
That's right.
There's something about just actually doing it and seeing it. And I think the students that I mentor, when they can see what the potential impact that they're having on the world. I mean, when we're starting, we have a lot of bad chemicals that we have in our environment that have been developed over, decades or hundreds of years. And if we don't know how to degrade them or get rid of them, they're going to persist and they're going to have a negative impact on, aquatic life or, animals or us. And so it's important for our field to get more and more people involved and want to address these challenges.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I'm going to use that example. You got someone right in front of you, your own mother, who's doing what you want to do, and you don't see it till you try it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, bioremediation, that's like your thing, right? So before we dive into your projects and what you're doing specifically, let's just talk about what it is for those younger listeners who the term isn't really going to make much sense if we don't talk about it. So what is bioremediation?
Bioremediation is the use of microorganisms or plants or, related biological that can actually degrade or reduce the level of contamination in the environment, be it in the water or be it in the soil. So for the past several decades, people call me a microbe hunter. So I travel around the world and I go to unique environments to look for microbes. So bacteria are very small. You can't see them with your eye, normal eyesight, unless you look at a microscope or an electron microscope, or there's billions of them together and they form like a biomass. So you might see them in your bathroom, on your, in your shower. If you don't clean the shower, you might have some biofilm there, which is not so good. But so my goal is to go to these unique environments. So like I go to Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, the Amazon forest, hot springs, and now Antarctica, and bring back soil samples or water samples to the laboratory. And then I take the microbes from that environment and I expose them to different contaminants. And then maybe one contaminant at a time. And then I see, can any microbes from that environment start to degrade that contaminant? And how fast do they degrade it? And what do they need to biodegrade it? Because some microbes will degrade it in an aerobic environment, which means they need oxygen. Like we're all aerobes. We breathe oxygen to survive. Sure. And then there's a whole group of microbes called anaerobic microbes that will not exist if there's oxygen. So they will only exist in non-oxygenated environments. So I expose these microbes to these contaminants and then I see how they perform. And lots of them can't do anything. But once in a while we get lucky and we find a microbe can actually biodegrade the contaminant that we're working on. And for example, so when I was at Stanford, I was studying methylene chloride, which is, suspected carcinogen, bad stuff. You don't want to be drinking this. And I was looking for microbes that could degrade it. And now this is going to sound kind of gross, but I went down to our local wastewater treatment plant and went into their, treatment, primary sewage treatment plant, and grabbed a bucket of waste and brought it back to the laboratory.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, it was fun. My husband's like, back.
Right.
But, brought back there, and then I started feeding those microbes methylene chloride. And after several months, I isolated a microbe. And the super fun thing was the microbe hadn't been discovered before. So I got to name the microbe, and that was kind of fun. And yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. What did you name it?
Well, Pseudomonas LP, because Pseudomonas is the genus, and we hadn't identified a species. So LP was for my initials. So
that's cool.
All fun. All silly. And then the microbe and we ended up getting on this Disney Channel show on how small is small. Oh, the whole thing was hilarious. I mean,
oh my gosh, that's incredible. I mean, how did you get into that? Was this a job that you filled, or did you have this interest and experience or expertise that just blossomed out of following your curiosity?
So how I got into so I was a biology major as an undergrad. I had taken some microbiology. And then after working with Cousteau and seeing how pollution was a big issue and all that stuff. And interestingly, with Cousteau, I was actually studying the pathogens. I mean, we were collecting water samples at the time, and pathogens are disease-causing microbes. And so then when I came back to Stanford, I was like, okay, what can I do to combine my background in biology with environmental engineering? And at that time, bioremediation was kind of just getting going. I mean, we use bioremediation all the time at wastewater treatment plants. The stuff that's coming out of your toilet goes to a wastewater treatment plant where there's billions and trillions of microbes that start breaking up the stuff coming from your toilet. Right. And then they clean it up. And then after they clean it up, then they chlorinate the water and then they discharge it. So bioremediation in that perspective has been going on for, hundreds of years. But now we're trying to get really good at it where we can take the microbes and, take and degrade contaminants that now are man-made contaminants, which is harder for the microbes. The microbes are good at, like when we have oil spills. Oil is a natural product that's on a And so when I worked on the Exxon Valdez and the Gulf oil spills, it was easier to biodegrade those types of contaminants because microbes had seen those before. It's now where we have these man-made contaminants, such as the chlorinated ones. And now people talk about the PFAS, which is the new flavor of the month contaminant. And they're very harmful. They're very toxic. And so now one of my goals as I progress in time is trying to find microbes to degrade those contaminants. So this is something that people always say to me, well, do you think we're still going to need environmental engineers, 10 years from now? Like, oh my goodness, we are going to need environmental engineers for as long as humans exist on the planet Earth.
For sure. For sure. That's a funny question, I think, for someone to ask. Do you think we'll always need actors and actresses?
For sure.
Right? That's so interesting. I mean, you get to combine travel with real impactful science and real science. Because I know some people, like you mentioned, they get a job and they don't feel like they're actually making an impact, but you get to actually see results. So that's so cool. Are there any other projects you're working on right now you want to talk about?
Sure. I'm working many projects.
Lots of them.
I have lots of projects. I'd say that 90% of my projects are using microbes to biodegrade contaminants. I have projects in Brazil, Australia, Europe, all across the USA. And a lot of them involve these chlorinated solvents, and they also involve emerging contaminants, such as 1,4-dioxane. And a really cool project I'm doing back east is where there was a lot of contamination in the groundwater. And we have these different contaminants. I talked about chlorinated solvents. We have tetrachloroethylene, we call it PCE, and that's what's used in the dry cleaning business. So a lot of times we have these contaminated areas around old dry cleaners because they would have this material that would be used to clean your clothes. And it did a good job of cleaning your clothes, but it was also bad for our health and the environment. And then there's other similar compounds. So at this site back east, they had very high levels of it in the groundwater. So it had been in big tanks, and then it migrated into the groundwater. And now it had impacted the groundwater in that area. And the concentrations were like tens of thousands of parts per billion. And the groundwater level, the drinking water level for this contaminant is 5 parts per billion, where there was like 50,000 parts per billion in the water. So very, very high levels of contamination at this site. And interestingly, this site had been around for about 40 years, and they put in a pump and treat. And when we mean by pump and treat, they put in these wells, they pump the contaminated water out of the ground. They pass it through what they call an air stripper. And this is the thing where you blow water you blow air into the water, and then that transfers the contaminant from the water into the air. And then you pass it through this carbon filter. So now we're transferring the contamination from the water to the air to a carbon. And then you have to take that carbon to either get to a landfill, or you have to regenerate it and use energy in that. And they've been doing this for 4 or 5 decades, and the concentrations of contamination were still in the tens of thousands of parts per billion in this site. So it really, we're taking the water out. It was not a good way to clean up the site, but that's kind of where the technology was at the time. They didn't have a clear understanding of how microbes could do it. So we came to the site 10 years ago, and I said, this site might be prime to get microbes into action. And so what I did was I put some of these in situ microcosms, we call them biotraps, into the wells. And it's like a little laboratory study in the well. And in these little plastic things, I would put different like sponges that contain different types of carbon. Because in order for the microbes to biodegrade these chlorinated solvents, the PCE, TCE, they need to have another food source. They need another carbon substrate. So if you could think of, I'm sending them in the filet mignon. So I'm going to give them the main dish to keep them happy. And think of the contaminant as the dessert. But we need the microbes to grow quickly and fast, and we need to make sure there's no oxygen in that environment, because these microbes are not going to degrade the contaminants if oxygen is there. So we set up this study in the wells, and I added different carbon substrates. So think of Pepsi versus Coke versus whatever to see what they like. Yeah. And then I actually also added non-native microbes. So microbes that were isolated from other locations that I knew could biodegrade the contaminants, because I wanted to know, are there microbes in that water and soil that can do the job? And if there isn't, can I add microbes from another site that have been shown to degrade it, and will they do the job? And so we did this study, and it was like a 6 to 9 month study. And at the end of the time, the data came back, and it looked like, wow, the native microbes could do some of the work, but they couldn't break it down all the way. So what we don't want, one thing in bioremediation, we have to be very careful. And when I work with scientists and engineers, is you don't want to break down a contaminant from one form to a more hazardous compound. Sure. And that can happen. So when we're working with these, PCE, TC, it biodegrades, and it actually can biodegrade down to vinyl chloride. And vinyl chloride is a worse contaminant. It's more toxic. So when people go out and do bioremediation and don't have a clear understanding of how the contaminants are degraded, they can actually make the site worse. Right. So for this one, we said we knew we needed to add these non-native microbes, these Dihalococoides, and say that 10 times. And we added them, and they were able to break it all the way down to ethene, which is a non-harmful compound. So we did the study, and then we went ahead and we actually did it in the field. And within 2 years, we went from more than 50,000 parts per billion of the contaminants down to less than 5 parts per billion. So it was a huge success. It was one of my greatest joys, is seeing, wow, we've taken a water source that was really contaminated, and now it's available to be used. So it's, a great team. And it's not about me at all. It's about our team that comes together because we need both microbiologists, we use chemists, we need hydrogeologists, we need people who understand how groundwater moves underground. I think a lot of people don't even realize we have like these aquifers, this flowing rivers underneath the ground. And a lot of these, flowing aquifers, provide drinking water to us. And my goal is to make sure that we can clean them up so it's safe for people to use. Yeah,
that's amazing work. And, something the average person has no idea is going on at all.
It's interesting. I'm here in Phoenix and, there was a 20,000 gallon fuel spill under Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. And I was working on that. And people have no idea that there's these huge places of contamination right there in their backyard. So it's always a little bit fascinating. Like, seriously, we have that kind of contamination where I live? And
yeah, that's incredible. All right. You talked about teams for a second. I did want to ask you because you've won all these leadership awards and stuff. And I saw that you mentioned teams on your LinkedIn. So I feel like you understand. And you just mentioned that, none of this happens on your own. So what type of advice do you have for people in leading successful, good camaraderie teams?
Okay. My number one rule when I bring a team together is to be courteous and listen to everybody. A group of individuals is 99.9% of the time better at solving problems than just one individual. And I have observed this numerous times over the years. And it's really important to not let anybody be inhibited by asking questions. I try to let my team, there are no dumb or stupid questions. You're only not taking advantage by not asking the question. Your question could be the key that helps us, understand or develop a whole new way of looking at something. And over the years, I really enjoy when my team, pushes back at me and they're like, Laurie, no, I don't think that's right. I think we should do it this way. And I'm like, let me think about that. and I don't have all the answers. And so I am a firm believer in camaraderie as well as respect for each other. And, over the years, the groups get stronger and better when they do that. So it's fun to watch that happen. And I think debate is a really good thing. It's not about always agreeing with everybody. I tell my team, I will tell you exactly how I feel about this. And I will be coming from a science or engineering perspective. But I also tell them, don't ever make it personal. Focused on what's the goal of the team? How can we complement each other? And also one of my beliefs is when I run my teams is I don't like to micromanage. I hire the best people I can hire. And it's not about, I'm looking, when I hire an individual, I want them to have a strong background. I want them to good, science and engineering credentials. But I also look for people who know how to work as a team. I've not hired several people in the past and they've called me up and they're like, well, why did you hire me? I have all these credentials. And I try to explain to them that my teams, you have to work together. And if you act like you know all the answers and you're going to take over the room, that's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a wake-up call to some people.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of times when I'm reviewing cover letters, they always start with I. Go read back and write that over where it sounds more like we.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's really great advice. And now it's time for Fieldnotes. That's the part of the show where we talk to our guests about their memorable moments in the field. And you have so many great stories. We encourage others to share their stories with the hashtag Fieldnotes so we can check them out and perhaps read them on a future episode. But I need to hear more about the Jacques Cousteau story. You talked about that, but I think there's more to it.
Okay, well, yeah, that I have to admit that was one of the most amazing highlights of my life and my career. Getting over there to work with Cousteau, it's funny because I took 5 languages in high school and French was not one of them. But when I got over there, everybody was ready to, help me out and teach me. But once we started the project, it involved going out into the oceans, into the Mediterranean Sea. And, twice a week, we'd collect water samples along the coast of Monaco, France, and Italy. And at that time, a lot of small towns were not treating their sewage. So literally what was coming out was just going into the Mediterranean Sea, and it was harmful to the marine life, harmful to humans. And so Cousteau was trying to gather data to demonstrate that this is not good. We need to do something about it. And so I'd be out there collecting the samples. We'd bring them back to the laboratory, and then we'd start doing chemical analysis, and I would evaluate microbial pathogens in the water. And one day I came back and I was doing some of the samples and preparing them and pulling them all together. And we just gotten some equipment that we're using to measure the pathogens. And I accidentally knocked it over, and it was glass, and it shattered. Oh my gosh, I was horrified. Oh my gosh, I'm the new kid in town. Here I just broke this expensive piece of equipment. So I go in to see Jacques, and I say, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I can't believe I, broke this piece. I apologize profusely. And, he looked at me and he said, people who do nothing break nothing. The only way you're going to make great discoveries throughout your life is that you will break things along the way, and it's going to be okay. And then he chuckled and said, I had actually bought another piece of that same equipment a couple of weeks ago. It just came in. So he's like, I must have had a premonition this was going to happen. I tell all the people and the young students I work with, especially when we're out in the field and we're in the lab, that obviously you want to be very careful. But things are going to happen. Things are going to break. We all make mistakes at some point or another. And the key thing is that we learn from our mistakes. And sometimes you make a fortuitous mistake and it ends up being just a great discovery. So I kind of pass that on to, students and my staff to say, just, keep an open mind, and great things can happen.
Yeah. Learn from your mistakes, but also own up to them. You wouldn't have got that great quote from him if you had not said that.
Exactly.
That's so amazing. And then just one more. I love the story that you shared about this lecture you gave in Japan.
Yeah, this is a really funny story. So this is probably about, a decade ago or so. And I'm getting ready to go over to Japan to a small conference. And I get to the conference, and there's a big lecture room, and it's in Tokyo. And it's filled with lots of people, mostly males, just put it out there. This is back when a lot of males were in the engineering field.
Sure.
And so, but they have a table set over at the side, and it's got coffee and tea and food on it. And people are coming into the lecture hall, and I'm over there grabbing a tea for myself. And then some guys look over at me, and they're like, subtly kind of look at me like, can I get them coffee or tea? And I'm like, sure. So for the next 5 or 10 minutes, I'm pouring coffee and tea for all these guys, and, they're all, happy and they're looking great. So now it's time for me to be the guest speaker. So I go sit up at the front of the, room, and then they call my name and they introduce me, and I go up to the podium. And that moment when I looked down at the audience, especially the people in the first couple of rows who I'd served coffee to,
right,
they were horrified. Oh my God. So, so after my talk, they all came up to me and said, oh, I'm sorry. I was like, no, I was happy to serve you coffee. It's not a big deal. It was a very endearing moment. I have a firm belief that you should help out in any way you can. And it's not about my title. It's not about my degrees. It's more about how we as individual humans and as a group can help each other out. That's my belief system.
No, I think it's great that you did it, and that you weren't like mad that they asked you, or, and that you didn't have to be mad that they asked you, because they figured it out on their own, right? Whoops. I should have asked her that.
But it's interesting because I became friends with them afterwards.
Yeah, that's great.
They knew that at that point that I was absolutely a team player, and that if I joined them on their projects, I'm going to be there for them to help out in any way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then we have to talk more about the humpback whales before you go, because I know I see the earrings and the pictures behind you, and 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 I want to hear more. And because Nic's not here. So we have to talk about this before you go. But where did your interest in the humpback whales start from? And then what have you been doing with that since?
Okay. So my interest in the humpback whales started about 40 years ago when my best friend from college, Danny Martin Myers, so shout out to you, Dan, sent me a National Geographic article, and on the front page of it was Dr. Sylvia Earle. Now, she is also a famous marine biologist, certainly as famous as Jacques Cousteau. And she was getting ready to go up to Alaska to study humpback whales. And my friend said to me, she goes, you should go work with Sylvia Earle. You should write her a letter. And so, of course, what do? I write Dr. Earle a letter telling her about my experience working at the shed, working with Jacques Cousteau, et cetera, and then I'd be interested in joining her team studying humpback whales. And I ended up interviewing with her at the California Academy of Sciences, and she said, yeah, I'd be happy to have you join our team. I will recommend you. And so 6 months later, I was spending 3 months up in Glacier Bay, Alaska, studying humpback whales. And that was in 1979. So a long time ago. And that just, oh my gosh, humpback whales are just, they are the most amazing creatures on the earth. So I'm just going to play a little song for you.
That's so cool.
And the humpback whales, I mean, the great thing about them is when you get in the water with them, it's like you're relating to another species. I mean, I think we relate really well to dogs and cats and things like those types of animals, which are awesome. But a humpback whale, when you're there in the water with them, and it's, a 20 or 30 ton, I mean, it's a huge, 20,000 pound, 40,000 pound animal. For a lot of people, they're like, aren't you afraid? Isn't it overwhelming? Yeah. And the first time you get in the water, you really have to just do a little namaste and breathe. And then once they start coming close to you and they look you in the eye and they're not going to hurt you. And then they start singing and your body literally starts vibrating.
Oh, wow.
It is an incredibly magical experience that I think everybody should have.
Oh, yes.
It opens up marine life in a whole new way. And so now I've been studying them for about 40 years, from Alaska to Antarctica, to Tonga, to Tahiti, to the Silver Bay. I mean, I go wherever they are. And normally what I'm trying to understand is how is what they eat, the krill population, how strong is it? How is environmental pollutants impacting the krill population, which then can impact, their food source.
Sure.
So there's a lot of different studies going on. Are large boats having a negative impact on humpback? So these are kind of like the major areas I focus on. And
that's cool. So now I need to know. Oh, go ahead. Your goal?
No, my goal is to, clean up pollution so these guys can keep growing and, so their food sources keep surviving.
Yeah, that's just so awesome. Do you have a favorite encounter? I mean, just being close enough to hear them and feel that is one thing, but.
Yeah. So my most favorite encounter, and it's just by pure chance. I was off Moorea, the island near Tahiti, and a mother and her calf had gone down to the bottom of the ocean. And I was just hanging out there at the top, just kind of waiting. And, maybe 20 minutes went by, 30. And I knew they were eventually going to come up because, they're mammals. They need to breathe air. They need to get air eventually.
Yeah.
But finally, after maybe I'd say a half hour, the mother and calf start coming up, and they were coming up really slowly. And the calf came right up to me, and I could just touch him.
Oh.
And we look at each other, and then he was like rolling over and just kind of like wanting to play with me. It was,
oh my gosh.
I felt like a little kid in a playground.
That's incredible.
Yeah, really lovely. And there really should be no reason to fear them because they don't want to hurt us.
Right. Oh my gosh. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So you have this amazing story of kind of self-discovery, which I really love. I don't want to give too much away. Just tell us what happened on this island that you went to.
So for one of my internships during college, I ended up working at the University of Florida, Gainesville Island Laboratory, which was on Seahorse Key Island. And this was an island where the graduate students would come and do marine biology experiments and studies, et cetera, et cetera. So when I came down there, the head of the marine biology department picked me up, brought me out to the coast. We hopped on a boat and then we went out to the island. And then on the way to the island, Dr. Marturo says to me, "Oh, Laurie, there's a few things I forgot to tell you about." And I was like, okay. And he's like, "Well, first of all, it's really cold on the island. We don't have a lot of heat and electricity. So I hope you got, warm stuff." I'm like, "Not a problem." He's like, "Oh yeah, and there's water moccasin snakes and those are poisonous. So watch out for them." I'm like, "Got it." He's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, all the graduate students are going to be back at the mainland doing their research. So you're going to be all alone." I'm like, "Right." And I'm the middle child of 7 kids. So I had never heard silence in my whole life.
Right.
So all of a sudden now they're dropping me off on an island. I got my peanut butter, I got my jelly, I got like 4 loaves of bread, and I'm ready to go. And the first couple days was like shocking to me. I'm like talking to the trees, I'm talking to the snakes, I'm talking to the birds. It was a really difficult time for me. I was incredibly lonely, and I was like, am I going to get through this? And, each day it got a little bit better and a little bit better, but I look back and it was probably one of the best self-discoveries I had. And it was related to how I need to value and take better care of friendships. I mean, when I came back and I saw my boyfriend, I was like super grateful. Yeah. I was like, "Oh my God, honey, I really don't appreciate you," and show you
right.
stuff and all that kind of stuff. And it was an experience. I'm glad I went through it. I don't wish this type of thing on everybody. And some people, may not have been able to get through it. But, while I was there, one day I decided, since I was alone, I did bring some fisherman wader pants with me, and I decided that I would walk around the island. And it was a really small island, maybe half mile wide, long,
Yeah.
So I'm walking around the island in my really nice fisherman wader pants, and it's 4:00 in the afternoon, and it's in January, and the tide is coming in, and I get a quarter of the way around the island, and I start sinking in this quicksand like mud, and I'm like, OMG, what's going on here? And, I'm like trying to stay calm because I know there's nobody around. I know if I yelled, there's nobody going to come. There was no cell phones back then. There was no communication. So as I'm sinking more and more into this quicksand like mud, I'm like, okay, I have to let's start thinking on your feet, literally. And the tide's coming in, and now the sharks are coming in. And, okay, take a deep breath. So finally I realized there's no way I'm going to get my waders out of the mud. I'm stuck. I'm going to stay here. So finally I decide the one solution is let's try to lay completely down in the water. So I just fall over into the water and I start filling up my waders with water. And so now I'm like lying prone in the water.
Yeah.
Tide's still coming in, and my sharks are out there. And I start wiggling out of the waders. And so I'm like a snake, wiggling. I swarm out of them. And finally I get out of them, and then I swim over to a part of the island where I know it's really hard and rocky and I will not, sink again. So that experience kind of taught me it's good to be fearless, but it's also good to know what you're getting yourself into. Finally, when the maintenance man who would come out to the island once a month or so, he sees my wader stuck in the mud, and I'm like, "Charlie, why didn't you tell me about this?" And he's like, "Well, Laurie, you didn't ask me, and I didn't on the island." And so, I think over time I've learned, try to ask lots of questions and be fearless, but use your brains also.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a crazy story. It could have a totally different ending if you weren't able to keep your wits about you. But just the concept of let's drop a young woman off on an island with no communication.
They would never do that again.
No.
I mean, and they had a two-way radio there, but it wasn't working at the time. I mean, it was literally one of these perfect storm events where I was incredibly lucky that everything went, fairly well. And, but you're right. It could have been, in fact, when I came back and I met with the professor, I said, you probably don't want to do that again.
Right. What a risk. That's so, it's just what a different time. So it's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But very cool story you got out of it. So awesome. That's so cool. We are running out of time. I feel like you have so many more stories to tell, but is there anything else that you want to touch on before we go?
Oh my gosh. I think the most important thing I can tell my audience and students is that everything you do as an individual, people say, well, we really can't have an impact on our planet and our environment, but we do. Each of us has an impact on it, and how we use our water and how we use our electricity. I mean, people say, well, we can't have an impact, but you do have an impact. And for young students who are trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, I say, be fearless. Just go out there and try it, and you will discover what excites you.
That's amazing. I love it. And finally, where can people get in touch with you?
The easiest way probably to get a hold of me is email. They can email me at LaPat, LLAPAT, at MNWE. That's Matrix New World Engineering. So it's just MNWE.com.
Fantastic. This has been really great. I have enjoyed every minute of it and can't wait to hear how your Antarctic adventure goes with 79. I mean, I'm blown away. 79 other women. So thank you so much.
We need to get you on the team. We're it's going to be about 10 more years of women going on this. So we're going to have to get it.
I like it. I like the sound of that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And that's our show. Thank you, Laurie, so much for joining us today. Please be sure to check us out each and every Friday. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. See ya, everybody.
Bye.